Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video I'll be sharing with you my fall reading recommendations. So I love especially kind of the colder seasons, including like autumn and fall, as just books to kind of just lose yourself in. And I think there's something special about the days getting colder, it's also getting darker out earlier, and I feel like that leads to just such a fun reading atmosphere. When it's just a cold fall day, it's dreary outside, it's raining, you can get cozy by the fire and lose yourself in kind of the book that you're reading. And so I always like to find kind of immersive reads that either kind of have that kind of cold autumnal feel to it, or just are spooky, or just have like kind of a fall vibe to it. So these are books that are kind of all over in terms of genre that I think you guys would love to read during the autumnal months. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So starting out, this is a book that I have, but it's on the top of my shelf and I didn't want to get a chair to go and get it, but it is Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. This is a book that I read for school back in grade 11 and I really loved it. Basically it is it's kind of a non-fiction book, but it doesn't read like a textbook. It reads more like a novelization in terms, like it reads like a historical fiction, and it follows the accounts of the making of the World Fair that took place in Chicago in the late 1800s. And so while this fair was, how Chicago ended up getting the World Fair, building everything for it, and getting everything like prepared for it, essentially a serial killer was using the fair as a way to lure people to his hotel and murder them. So it kind of follows essentially the serial killer's upbringing and eventually his utilization of the fair, while also giving you kind of the parallel of the fair being built essentially. And sorry, very popular, another email. But basically this one, like I said, is nonfiction. The author does include a lot of journal entries of the people that played key roles either in the actual fair itself or diary entries of the serial killer. And like I said, it doesn't read like a textbook. It's very much a novelization, and even when I was in grade 11 I still really love this book, and it's been a long time since I've read it and I still think about it. It's so spooky, it's so haunting, and I think it's going to be made into a TV show, I want to say. I'm not sure where. Lexie will have it editing Lexie will have it here, but basically it is just a really phenomenal story, and just how the author is able to write it in a way that doesn't bore the reader. I think that's where Erik Larson really stands out, is that it is based on facts, but he's able to write it in a way that really engages the reader and keeps the overarching storyline progressing. So this one is very spooky, obviously dealing with kind of what is claimed like the first serial killer, which is just really spooky, and I think fall is the perfect time to kind of read something like this. So if you're wanting to try something different with a nonfiction, I recommend starting with this book. Next up, this is a book that was actually kind of me stepping outside my comfort zone, and because it wasn't, like with the synopsis, it wasn't really something that I would just pick up by myself, but I was given this as a birthday gift, and it has become one of my favorite trilogies of all time, and it is the Year One trilogy by Nora. And basically the overarching premise of this series is that it takes place in the kind of modern day, where there is this virus that goes around that kills and wipes out 2/3 of the world's population, and those who are immune to this sickness are those who have some sort of magic capabilities to them. So you can see how that can cause a lot of problems with the people that don't have any magic to them. So society is really much on the fringe, and it kind of goes off from there. But this one is just spooky. A lot of the imagery in here is light versus dark, good versus evil, and just kind of that kind of unease feeling that you have with, like, there aren't very many people left, and there's a lot of political divides within kind of the people that have survived, and just kind of that spookiness of it being so quiet. And yeah, like the second book in the series is by far my favorite. This one kind of very much sets up the center stage of this world, and yeah, I loved it. It kind of gives that fall, like look at this, fall vibes for sure. But yeah, I just love it, and I feel like a lot of people don't talk about this trilogy. I think it is really well done. Like I said, it was very much me stepping outside my comfort zone, but kind of given everything with the COVID-19 pandemic, I feel like most of us can relate to going through some sort of pandemic experience. Obviously not to the extent of this, but I feel like we have now that kind of experience, which I think in terms of like this fantastical setting makes for a very interesting read. Next up, this is a relatively new crime series, and it is the Kate Marshall series by Robert Bryndza, the first one being 9 Elms. This one I think is very spooky compared to some of the other ones, but basically the premise of this one is that we follow Kate Marshall, who 15 years ago was at the kind of prime of her career. She was a homicide detective in London, and she ends up catching the 9 Elms serial killer, and what should have been the highlight of her career ended up being her downfall. The media ended up tearing her apart because prior to her arresting the serial killer, she had a romantic relationship with him, and even to this day, 15 years after the fact, she's still very much dealing with the aftermath and kind of picking up the pieces of that experience. And so she is a criminology professor. She's trying just to live a low-key life, but when there are a series of murders that are eerily similar to the MO of the 9 Elms killer, she kind of somewhat gets inadvertently inserted into this investigation, and it goes off from there. And what I love too about Kate Marshall, this character in particular, is that she's very flawed. Again, like, she's still struggling with a lot of demons, with addiction, and you kind of see that throughout the course of this series, which I really love. I like how she's flawed. I like how she has a lot of these struggles, and we kind of see her overcome these and, you know, struggle, which I really enjoy. And this one is just really spooky. The kind of relationship that Kate has with this serial killer is also very creepy, and the way this serial killer thinks is also very spooky as well. So I think this is a very good introduction to the series, and if you're looking for a relatively new crime series that has, I want to say, 3 or 4 books out now, then this is a good one to get into. So it wouldn't be fall without talking about A Dark Academia. This is kind of one that I feel like has gained a lot of resurgence recently with book talk and all that thing. But basically it is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This is a book that I read last year and I really enjoyed it. There's something like truly remarkable about this book because it had essentially kind of kick-started the dark academia trend in modern day literature, so you can see where it all began. And this book is very interesting too because you basically know the events of the story from the first page. So we follow this young man who is in university, and he ends up becoming kind of grouped in with this very select group of students that have this very eccentric professor. And so from the beginning of the book, we know out of this friend group, one of them is murdered, and we know who exactly that person is. So the book, you basically see the lead up to the eventual murder and then the aftermath as well. And this kind of just really has that dark academia vibe where there's also murder, but you get kind of students studying the classics and kind of the arrogant student like dark academia vibes in here. And I think it's very compelling too because you are very invested in these characters, but they're so unlikable, but regardless you're still invested in what's going to happen, which I think makes it a lot of fun. And you can definitely see how this has kind of laid out the blueprint for the dark academia trend that has become very popular since then. So like I said, I read this last autumn and it was, I think, the perfect time to read it. So yeah, like I said, I very much recommend this one. And lastly, this is like the one that has like total autumn vibes for me. Like, this is when I think of fall, I think of this book, and it is The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton. And this one is just has like that wet, gloomy feel to it. So basically the premise of the story is we follow this young woman whose grandmother has recently passed away, and when she's going through her grandmother's stuff, she finds this very kind of strange fairy tale book. And so she discovers that her grandmother was actually adopted. She was found to be abandoned on a ship that was coming from England to Australia, and we never really know much about her grandmother's family and like why she was left abandoned. The only thing they know is that she was holding this mysterious fairy tale book, and so the granddaughter is very determined to kind of learn more about her family, her grandmother's family. So she ventures off to London to discover more about her family's past. And so while this is going on, she's kind of, putting the pieces of the puzzle together. We get flashbacks to this girl who's growing up in kind of late Victorian England, and these stories eventually kind of, you can see, become intertwined. But this one, it totally has that fall vibes where it's like wet, groggy, dark London, and then like the wet, soggy countryside in England as well. And yeah, this book is just so enchanting. You just lose yourself in it, and I think this is the perfect book. Like I said, when I think of fall, I think of this one to just curl up by the fire on a wet, gloomy day and just lose yourself in this world and these characters. And what is really great about Kate Morton too, with all her other books too, is how she's able to seamlessly weave in the past and present day storylines so that it doesn't feel clanky. It doesn't feel like the narration of the story is like disjointed. It kind of keeps the overarching narrative progressing with the two different storylines, which I think is really enjoyable too. So like I said, this is peak fall vibes, and you can like even see in here, like it just kind of has that autumnal feel with the cover. So like I said, this is my quintessential fall read. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what some of your favorite autumn reads are and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.